In light of the recent third-party announcements and a pretty awesome showing at PAX East, we were deliberating how long is too long for a Switch port. What's going on, everybody? It's Zach from Switch Force. Gabe is here, and we've got some games coming soon that are pretty exciting, but are pretty delayed in terms of their original release. Things like Wolfenstein 2, Crash Bandicoot Insane Trilogy, potentially, possibly even the Spyro Reignited Trilogy. And the question of the day, Gabe, is how long is too long? We really don't see many games that have a short gap. It's not like, oh, it comes out on September 6th for PS4 and Xbox One, and then the 13th for the Switch. There are some slight cases with indie games. WWE 2K18 released 6 weeks after other platforms. NBA released digitally on the same day, physically a little bit later. But in most instances, it is a pretty long gap. The question becomes, how long is too long before you choose to play this game elsewhere?
Yeah, I think the line is super fine. I think you either have to release really, really, really late on Switch or at
Mm-hmm.
the same time. Anything months, I feel like that's not great. I use really, really late as an example with Skyrim, things like that. Like something that's been like dormant for quite some time. We did see the
Mm-hmm.
re-release of Skyrim on other platforms as well, but it coming to Switch, it's a 6 year old game at this point, something like that. So that's perfectly fine, but the one that worries me is the Spyro thing, right? People are gonna go play that on other platforms if it's not out day one on Switch, and then let's say
Mm-hmm.
it comes out 2 3 months later, the way that you suspect it will. The Switch version automatically just like sells way less because people already played it, and the interest probably won't be there anymore.
Yeah, it's definitely a it's interesting when you look at the ports that have come to Switch, and as you mentioned, something like Skyrim, a very different case than something like Wolfenstein 2, given that Skyrim is way long ago. I think those the time limit or the statute of limitations is pretty much infinite, right? If they wanted to all of a sudden bring back Mario Galaxy or they wanted to bring back Fallout New Vegas, no one would be complaining because it's so long, right? If it's something that exists years or even generations ago, hey, it's okay. But when it comes to a newer game like Wolfenstein 2, which I think is the most pertinent example since we recently talked about our impressions of that game, it's like that is going to be roughly around, we have no set date, but assuming it hits in the summer, that's like a 7-8 month gap. Crash Bandicoot Insane Trilogy is seeing about a year gap. I do tend to agree with you that in some ways a longer separation between the dates is almost in its best interest because you forget about it, and the reintroduction of it later is kind of like, oh, I would love to play that. I missed it. Or, oh, I would love to play it again. As opposed to like the frustration that sets in when it's like, hey, this game comes out on other platforms, such and such. 2 months later, it's hitting Switch.
Yeah, I mean Wolfenstein is a good example, a game that I like forgot about. I am a fan of the series. I've played the New Order and the Old Blood. I'm a fan. I didn't play Wolfenstein 2 right away, not because I knew it was coming to Switch or anything. It just slipped. And then it got announced for Switch. I'm like, okay, cool. Maybe I'll play it here. And then the Doom port ended up being good, despite it not being as graphically impressive, things like that. Doesn't matter as much. The game's still fun. I'll still have fun with it. So now I'm waiting for Switch, and not that I'm like urging to play Wolfenstein 2, but I can imagine like certain people like you can get it cheaper somewhere else. Like that's the other thing about like these long waits. By the time it comes to Switch, you're paying $60 for it. It's already an inferior version, and you could get it for like $20 to $30 like
Yeah.
somewhere else. Like that's like the big detriment, and that has way more to do with how long I think I'm willing to wait. I can't speak for everyone, but I would feel that they would have a like-minded sentiment.
Right. And I think another like real big factor here is when you announce. Because if it's something like Crash that is not announced initially or even anywhere near the beginning of the hype cycle, then it's like, oh, what a pleasant surprise. But when it's announced very close or even similar timing, that's when I think it becomes a bit of a tough situation. And I feel like we see that more with indie games where they're like, oh, hey, it's coming to Switch. We don't know when, but just want to put that out there. And then 8 months later, 12 months later, 16 months later, we still aren't playing it. And then you're like, man, I feel burned because I could have picked it up on PC or I could have picked it up, on another platform. I almost think it's smarter of them, if there is going to be a substantial delay, to not say anything until far closer to actual release.
Yeah, and maybe this is where we bring in the Spyro conversation a little bit. We've talked about it. We both think it's coming to Switch, right? But Also, let's put the disclaimer out there. I don't think either of us are like humongous Spyro fans.
Hmm.
How long are you willing to wait for Spyro? Like, again, assuming it's coming to Switch, are you going to play it on other platforms first, or are you going to wait for Switch? If you're waiting for Switch, how long are you willing to wait before you're like, hey, like this thing's available like elsewhere?
Yeah, and I mean, obviously, it's very game dependent. It's very just the whole way that it's announced dependent. Because if they make no mention of a Switch version, right?
Which they haven't.
Which they haven't, that's all conjecture at this point, and rumor leakers. Maybe you play it, maybe you don't. If a Switch version gets announced next year, like, oh wow, I missed that game. If they were to announce like a Switch version and like say, oh, but it's coming early 2019, I almost feel like in some subconscious way that motivates me to pick it up on the other platform first. Cause like I don't want to wait. I really think there is something about if it's announced or not. Like Wolfenstein 2 is something that I had no intention of waiting on, but it just happened. And then a Switch version gets announced. Okay, cool, that's great. If they come out again, maybe I'm weird, but I would almost rather them not say that Spyro is coming to Switch and then just it comes whenever it comes. I guess it's franchise dependent. If there's a major game you want to play. But look, there's hype around Crash Bandicoot Insane Trilogy, right?
On Switch?
I think so.
Okay. Yeah, sure.
At least on other platforms in general, right? Xbox and whatnot. Had that been announced, like, hey, coming to Xbox and Switch a year later, to me, that is where the grievances would start to arrive. And I'll use Hollow Knight as an example, a game that I'm very much looking forward to, a game that I missed out the first time. As soon as announced for Switch, I was like, dude, Hollow Knight is amazing. I should play it on PC. Oh, it's coming to Switch soon. No, it's not. 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 And now I'm in this quandary where it's like, and that's, I guess, what I don't like. I would rather, like, how long is too long? To me, that length is actually measured by the announcement, not so much the initial release.
So if Spyro on Switch doesn't get mentioned for like another 6 months, you're okay with that?
As weird as it is, I think it makes it easier for me. It's easier to not expect it, and then maybe the way my life works out, I haven't played it or I played a little of it, and now I can play it either again or play it for the first time. I just feel like mindshare wise and almost like just like morale wise, it would be better off to not explicitly state that it's getting second priority,
But we know a lot of the times, right? Like we look. I was gonna bring up Crash, but that's a bad example because they had exclusivity for PlayStation. Like that's just business, and that's the way it works. And now it's coming to Xbox as well. Spyro's a tricky one. Like I feel the type of way that it's apparently coming to Switch. Like we both feel strongly that it is, and it's not being like talked about yet.
Yeah, and we're kind of still on that year two quandary of like, how does Nintendo handle this, right? There's still theories and thoughts that Call of Duty is coming, just hasn't been announced yet. There's theories and thoughts that Spyro is coming and hasn't been announced yet. How does Nintendo handle that? When we look back for this video, we recognize that in spite of there not being a ton of third-party ports, they actually have been decent on day and date. Granted, some things like Wolfenstein 2, which was never announced initially, it's far later. But when it comes to like FIFA, when it comes to NBA, at least digitally, when it comes to like the Lego games, things of that sort, Dark Souls Remastered, they have been good on getting those day and date. So I think for me and kind of for you, I would assume it's like day and date or far later, and that's what we want. And I'd almost rather them not say anything until it's much closer. And same with indies. Like, I think that it is very, and maybe the stats prove otherwise, but to me it seems detrimental for these indies to say, oh, our game's coming to Switch at the end of the year, first half of 2018, second half of 2018. Like, at that point, I think you're burning goodwill and good faith, and I would rather them just like not say it, and then, hey, like, Don't Starve. Look at the enthusiasm around Don't Starve. I expect Don't Starve to be a pretty good seller on Switch. I think that is a very quality game with a beloved, with a fan base that loves it. And the fact that they announced it a week before release, I'm not saying you have to do it that dramatically, but if Don't Starve was announced like when the Switch released and then it comes out April 12th, 2018, like that's the sort of stuff that to me just really grinds it gets my goat, Gabe.
It doesn't grind your gears. It gets your goat.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, some of that stuff happens unintentionally. I don't think
Sure.
I don't think Wargroove was like announced when it was originally announced, and they like knew in their head like, hey, this thing isn't coming out until like late 2018. Like I don't think that was a thought.
Oh no, absolutely not. But I feel like it just does a number on you. I feel it's very, you know, Wolfenstein. How many times have we talked about Wolfenstein? Because it was announced, and then we're like, when's it coming? Is it too late? Is it too much? You eliminate that conversation if you just do the Crash thing. Hey, it's a year later and it's coming out. Hey, Don't Starve, it's way later and it's coming out. Like, I feel like that saves you a lot of grief.
Yeah. I also wanted to point out one other thing though. Like, the Switch audience doesn't seem to have issues buying games that are available elsewhere, and have been for quite some time. Xenoverse 2, like on Switch in Japan, like sold better than any other platform. Yeah, wait, I did say the correct one. Yeah, Xenoverse, not Xenoblade.
Yes.
Those two always get me. But yeah, like, that sold best on Switch. Again, in Japan, Dragon Ball's huge in Japan, so I mean that means something. Skyrim super well on Switch, sales wise. Doom, we don't have like any exact numbers for that, but by all intents, like, people seem to have still bought that. It does seem like the audience that the Switch currently has no problem waiting.
Yeah, I think then the hypothesis becomes that the switch tax or the delay tax or whatever of how you mentioned, hey, it's going to be full price when you could pick it up for $20, isn't really as big of a factor as maybe we initially thought, and therefore, how long is too long, at least from a monetary standpoint, doesn't seem to matter as much. And it would be interesting to line up the numbers and the data and see, is that because, one, they never played it initially, two, they didn't have a potential to play it elsewhere, so like the price, it doesn't feel like they're being burned, or three, the portability and the Switch features are so desired that it's okay. But that is a very good point, that we haven't seen as much pushback as I would have expected. I think initially there is, but when the games actually come out, it feels like people are okay with it.
Yeah, well, I mean, one other thing that I would love to know, and there's no way for us to have any accurate stats when it comes to this, but like, what's the crossover like? How many people just have a Switch because they're Nintendo fans and they don't have any other platforms? Like, I want to know, like, or how many people have PS4s and Xbox Ones and the Switch is like more like a secondary thing. Like, I'm sure we can find some numbers on it, but I don't know how accurate they would be, and that's something I would love to know. We're lucky that we have like every platform available to us, and that's why maybe this is like a little bit more of a problem for people like us, where like, hey, we can just go play things now.
Right.
Not everyone has that luxury, and I guess it's easy to forget that sometimes. So maybe I wonder if like that has something to do with it.
Yeah, and I'm sure also like software attach rate has something to do with it. If you're buying only a couple games a year, then paying 60, maybe you expect it, versus like, oh, if you're buying a game, a week, then yeah, you're looking for deals and you're hunting for that $20. And there's a lot of factors here, but to tie it together, how long is too long? There's many things that fall into that algorithm for me. But at the end of the day, I feel weird coming to this conclusion, but I don't know that there is a too long. I don't know. I think Switch somehow sits in this strange zone where like it's okay. And it's frustrating, but are there games that you have played preemptively that you wish you would have waited for Switch, or have you waited? Because all the examples I can think of, Wolfenstein, Hollow Knight, like, I've waited.
There's one right now that's pretty hard for me to wait on.
And that is
Noir. Like, I want to play that. Like,
okay.
I do not want to wait, but I also know it's like weeks and not months.
And you've also already touched it, so I think that's a little bit of a difference.
Yeah.
Had you not played it, I think you'd be okay.
Oh yeah, had I not played, I mean, I didn't even know the game was like as awesome as
Yeah.
it is. I had no idea. Yeah. Beyond that, I can't think of any example that I just like. Yeah, I can't think of any. I
think
don't
it's
have a
also
problem
like
waiting.
I think it's also just the amount there at its current state. It's not like, oh, every third party game hits Switch and they're all delayed. It's like, oh, we go back to the same few examples, right? If it was everything, then it'd be a problem. But we pretty much know, like, if we get FIFA again, if we get Madden, if we get NBA, they're going to be day and date, and that's good. It's just sort of these more fill the gap titles, it seems like, that's a bit of an issue with.
Yeah, I mean, and it can work in positive ways as well. Like, I'm excited for Crash. I didn't play Crash on PlayStation 4. Like, I played the games back in the day, but I didn't play it on PS4. Now I'm going to get a chance to play it on Switch, and I'll play it on Switch. So I guess sometimes it works to the console's benefit, I guess. I don't know. It's a weird
Yeah,
situation.
and I'm sure some people would say like, hey, if we knew that Spyro was for sure coming to Switch, then it would make it easier for us to make that choice. I guess I'm just of the opposite mindset that to me that just elicits a little bit of frustration, and I would almost rather not know. Like, does the Switch then fall into this strange category of it is the hey, I missed that? Like, in Switch gets a little in case you missed it tag on the box. Like,
Hmm.
I think that might be a factor as well. It's not like oh, it's pulling poor selling titles, but given its portability, given its how it integrates into your life, it kind of is like a ICYMI machine, right?
Hmm. Yeah.
Which is kind of clever and kind of cool. Let us know in the comments down below how long is too long for you. Would you rather them not announce it and just, hey, it shows up a year later and it's coming to Switch? Or does knowing ahead of time give you more clarity in how you're going to decide? What games have you waited for? What games have you not waited for? And how do you feel in general about Switch getting games later? If that is negative, if that is positive, the price point, there's a whole lot to discuss here, and we'd love to know what your take is. So let us know in the comments down below. We'll be in there with you guys. Make sure to subscribe to stay up to date on all the latest and greatest from the Switch. When they get new third-party games, day and date, and delayed, we'll let you know. Follow us on Twitter and Discord. Links in the description below. And until next time, for myself and Gabe, thank you so much. Have a great day. We love you. Switch Force out. How long was that?
17 minutes. Well, 18.
Fuck!